Welcome to a realm where personal growth meets expansive spirituality and where we're not just scratching the surface. We're diving deep, widening our perspectives, and having a darn good time doing it. This is the Enlightened Podcast, and I am your host, Jen Hamilton. You'll enjoy an infusion of motivation, empowerment, and inspiration that will resonate in every aspect of your life. Expect captivating stories, heartfelt musings, and my own personal experiences. But that's not all. I'm bringing awe-inspiring individuals to the table, so get ready to meet some remarkable souls whose wisdom and stories will leave you spellbound. No topic is off limits here. Brace yourself for raw authenticity, unfiltered vulnerability, and yes, the occasional splash of explicit language. We're delving into the realms of the esoteric, mystical, and the woo-woo, unafraid to explore the extraordinary. So if you are ready to venture beyond the surface, to explore the depths of your soul, and to awaken the magic of life, if your heart says yes, then hit that play button and let the Enlightened Podcast guide you on this remarkable expedition. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Enlightened Podcast. I am your host, Jen, and today's very special guest is Andrew Pearce. Andrew is a professional stress and performance coach, showing high achievers how they can master the skill of emotional release in such a way they are able to rest, regenerate, and refocus without needing to stop doing business, meaning they can maintain a high level of output, results, and performance. Through his work, Andrew's clients also experience moments of awakening where they can connect to clarity, direction, and deeper meaning and purpose in their lives, all of which results in them being happier now and enjoying their quality of their life. The conversation that I had with Andrew was so enlightening. There are so many gold nuggets of wisdom, and I know you're absolutely going to love it. So without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome, Andrew, to the Enlightened Podcast. It's so great to have you here.
Thanks, Jen. Good to be here and looking forward to a fun conversation.
Yes. Now, where in the world are you? Because we've got a bit of background there. I'm not sure if it's going to pick up on the audio, but what is going on in the beautiful part of the world that you live?
Yeah, so I live in Bali, Indonesia, have been for the past 5 years, and you're going to get roosters. You're going to get roosters in the background. In fact, one time I lived, wasn't really live, but I was in Lombok for like 6 or 7 weeks, and there was a mosque. So most of Indonesia is Muslim. Bali has a bit more Hindu going on, but there was a mosque just like right there, and they had speakers on the top of the mosques, and it was so obnoxious. It was like 150 meters away from where I was. That was the worst. But here, there's just a bit of roosters in the background every now and then.
I love it. I love it. Now, Andrew, you're a stress and performance coach. Tell us what that even means. What is it that you do? What magic do you bring to the world?
Yeah, so the way that I go about things is looking at removing what hinders performance. I think there's a lot of like time management tips out there. There's a lot of performance tips. There's a lot of schedule your calendar this way, do your daily habits or your morning habits that way. Um, and I think a lot of times it comes from a forceful, disciplined, strong mental will type place where eventually an overused strength becomes a weakness. So the way that I help people perform at a higher level is by removing what is hindering their performance in the first place. And a lot of high achievers or a lot of sports stars or movie stars or whatever have their zero to hero, um, and they get a lot of drive and determination and focus from a past full of pain. And it works. That's the thing. It works. Like you can push from fear and you can force from fear and you can create a high level of material result for sure. Um, but if that stuff's always in the body, it's always in the body, and eventually it's just not sustainable. Eventually it's gonna wear you out. So the way that I go about helping people is Let's address what the beliefs, the doubts, the fears, the insecurities that did work for you to get you here, but are which are now hindering your performance. Um, so it's a very much a reset, come back to neutral, refocus, get some rest, get some energy back, and then away you go.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. And tell us, so when people come to see you, you mentioned that, they could already be a high achiever, high material value. What are they coming with? How do they know where they're at that point where they're like, okay, something's got to give now? Is it the breakdown in the body? Is it a mental breakdown? Like generally, what state are people in when they come to see you?
Yeah, so it's like they're tired and they're noticing that performing at that level, there's a dip in performance. It's just harder to keep it up. Um, and look, the ideal client is into their personal growth and their development. They're, what I would call solution aware, and they value it, and they do believe that coaching is the answer. I mean, there's many ways that you can address problems. Some might go to a nutritionist or something of that nature, but they come where they're like, I can't keep this up. Like I can't keep going like this. That's usually the point at which people come to me.
Yeah, yeah. And tell us about, how did you get into this work? Like, what's your background? Is this something you've always done, or was the version of you that once existed now the version of people that you help?
So I got into coaching just out of passion and interest. I don't have you know, most people get into coaching from like either they had their own coach or they went through their own experience, their dark night of the soul, whatever you want to call it. But I've always just had an interest in like universal law and why we do what we do, and read, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People when I was a teenager, and got my first Tony Robbins book when I was a teenager. And I knew, I'm like, I just would love to get paid to give people advice. That'd be great. I had my ways of thinking, my philosophies on life. And then I started studying a Bachelor of Psychological Science, which I never finished. I only did a few months because I then came across human behavior and life coaching at a place called the Coaching Institute in Melbourne. And got a Facebook ad Monday night, called them Tuesday, went in Wednesday and signed up. And I originally had a business called Anxiety Free Living, which focused more on general and social anxiety. But then with the evolution of myself and my business, I then started to focus more on the um, stress and burnout and performance. And I wouldn't say that I've had a rock bottom, absolutely fried experience of burnout, but I've certainly been in a position where I'm like, I'm tired, I'm bitter, I'm resentful. I've got a bit of, not happy about my situation, and I'm like, I need some rest. I can't just keep pushing. So that's how I got to where I am now. So I'm just a little over 9 years into coaching.
That's amazing. And so it sounds like you've also got like quite a spiritual undertone to the work that you do as well. Let's talk about some of your favorite spiritual philosophies.
Yeah, so I love spirituality. I love like consciousness. I love my Alan Watts, Eckhart Tolle, David Hawkins. Love the Conversations with God series.
Mm.
So a couple of spiritual undertones that I have. Um, I really like from Eckhart Tolle is that our conscious presence is the transformational tool that dissolves all
Mhm.
suffering. The examples that I give is like what happens to vampires when they're exposed to the light of the sun? They die. They just evaporate. Or
Mm.
like fairy floss in water, it just evaporates. And so I really love that our conscious presence, which makes total sense to me. Like I find spirituality to make a lot of sense. I've even as woo woo as it is, I'm like I see it as like, oh, that's really logical. That actually makes sense. Um, and I just love to think that if I have the willingness to be consciously present with my stuff for long enough, it will dissolve. Just as vampires cannot stand the light of the sun, fear cannot stand the light of consciousness. How could it? What
Mm.
a fault or a flaw in the design. It would just go against what life is. So that's one that I really love. Everything being one and interconnected, and that we are that life is just expressing itself and experiencing itself. Alan Watts talks a lot about how the fundamental game of life is hide and go seek. That life is hiding from itself for the purpose of seeking itself and surprising itself and becoming aware of itself, because that's exciting. That's just what it's doing. So all those types of, the present moment is all that there is. Everything's one and connected. You are which you seek. Life isn't about learning. It's about surrender and letting go and remembering and becoming aware of what you already are. The ego is the false self, um, and that it's an illusion. It's not the truth of reality. All of those types of things are undertones. Um, Another one that I was just reminded of the other day. Have you ever heard of David R. Hawkins? He has Hawkins' scale of consciousness.
Oh, yes,
He's
I have heard
written,
of that. Yep, yep.
yeah, yeah. He's got this video on YouTube about the final door, which is the point of surrendering life itself over to God, is his language, like surrendering the experience of existence. And he speaks about how some ascended master is just like, all fear is an illusion and you're totally safe. And so I use that as my point of reference. For example, if I'm speaking to a client, is I'm like, you're totally safe to feel completely unsafe. I'm always looking and using spiritual truth as a point of reference, like and to go more deeply into my experience. And people can use spiritual truth to bypass and to like take a step back from their experience, or they can, oh, I'm totally safe to feel like an absolute piece of shit. Great, I can really launch into that because it's not the truth of who I am anyways. So I definitely have a spiritual undertone to all the teachings that I have, all the programs that I write, all the posts that I do.
Yeah, and you and I are on such the same page. Like we're into the same things. We have the same outlook on things, sort of the same depth of spirituality. For me, it started like I really dove deep into this the more I started working with plant medicine. Did you have an awakening in particular? Did you work with plant medicine? Did it find you? Was it you were listening to, reading books, listening to podcasts? How did this sort of land for you?
When I hear it, it just lands. That's how
Mm.
it's been. That's how it's been for me. I'm just like, oh yeah, that makes sense, or it entices me. I remember in one of my coach trainings at TCI, which really wasn't overly spiritual at all. Um, it was very human behavior type approach. But I remember Sharon Pearson sharing one time, she's like, everything on the outside is the illusion, everything on the inside is the truth. And I'm like, oh, that sounds fucking cool. What's that about? I want to know more of what that's about. Um, and like when I'm listening to Alan Watts or if I'm reading the Conversations with God, I just get a felt sense of it. I'm like, oh yeah, I get that. I feel like I get it here. I feel like I get it here. I'm not fully, it's not a full awakening understanding. I've never had a full spiritual awakening like other realms type thing, but I feel my experience is like uh I would call it like a kind of grounded awakening. There's not necessarily anything that's like I've been blasted open to other
Mm.
realms. And I've done my DMT. I've done plenty of mushrooms. I've done ayahuasca and stuff like that. And so that's how I would experience it more. It's just like I'm like, oh yeah, I get that, which makes sense to me because I'm remembering and becoming aware of what I already know. So a kind of grounded awakening is the way that I would explain it for myself.
Oh, I love that so much, a grounded awakening. I want to circle back to something that you said before, and that was around bypassing, because I feel like we do see it quite frequently in perhaps the coaching community, perhaps, the spiritual community, if we're using labels here. Tell me about your experience either working with people or being in this industry where you've seen bypassing and what that is in your view of the world.
Yeah, it happens a lot. I did a podcast just yesterday morning, and it was more of a the guy in the audience was a bit more religious, and someone was commenting saying, "I forgive myself, I forgive everyone else, I forgive life, or whatever." And I read that, and I'm just like, "No, you don't. You're just saying stuff.
I'm trying to convince
Like
yourself.
you're just saying words, mate. But there's no way." Yeah, it's like I had a client one time. They're like, I bless my ex, and I want the best for them." I'm like, "No, you don't. Can I swear here or no swearing?"
Yes, yeah, yeah, go for it.
I'm like, "No, you don't. You fucking hate them. You think they're a cockhead asshole. Like, you can't just say I bless, I bless, or I forgive, and it's just done." Or one time I ran a retreat, and someone's like, I can't remember the question, but they're like, "No, because I know that I'm love and light." I'm like, "You get the idea, but you don't feel it in the body." So I think I know what I teach a lot of, and what like the first stage of the work that I do is addressing the fear of fear,
Mm.
which we all inherently have, is a fear of fear. It's like if someone's anxious and then they're anxious about being anxious, it's like what the I'm terrified of what's happening in my body, which is fear. Um, and if people don't have, if they have a high fear of fear and a low willingness to face it, then it'll just be, they'll get these great reframes and these nice perspectives. Which, if someone's at a point where that's the best they've got and that helps them manage their situation for the time being, and then they go deeper, great. But if they never go deeper, it's like if someone says, "No regrets, can't live your life with regrets." It's like, well, you can and you do. So
Uh,
what I would suggest is don't deny the regret that's in your body. So a lot
mm.
of people, if there's a high fear of fear and there's a lack of willingness, like a fear of going in, "Oh, but what if I say that? Won't it manifest?" And it's like, no, what you hold within is what you create without. And often at times naming is how to get that out of there. So I think um, spiritual bypassing is it happens if it's where you're at for the time being, and it's like it's helping you to at least manage the intensity of what's going on. Fine, that's fine. But at the end of the day, you're gonna have to get deeper into the body if you're really looking for resolution and salvation.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's like the good vibes only movement, that we saw. It's good vibes only. And it's like, actually, it's not. It's fucking messy. And, we're here as humans experiencing, polarity. So we have to experience the full polarity of human emotions and that full spectrum of it. And if we don't, then we're denying parts of ourselves. And I think that, for me, that's where bypassing comes into it. It's when we refuse to look at the shadow part because it stings or it's uncomfortable, which I love talking about and hearing people's perspective of how the fuck did we get here. Like how did we get to a point where we do fear the fear, or we fear the feelings, or we fear that, we have such deep ingrained fear that we're not going to be safe if we are in the fullest expression of ourselves, even in the on the spectrum, we'll call it negative emotions, even though they're just emotions. How did we get here?
Yeah, so I think again, it's the game of hide and go seek. Like life needed to disconnect from itself to experience itself as what it is. Um, I think this example will bring it back is myself and a friend were talking about the other day about sincere service versus insincere service, and we were making note of the fact that you don't need to call service sincere because it's inherently sincere, but by making the definition of the two, it will take you to what service is. Does that make sense said that way? It's
Yeah.
like,
Are you talking about the duality of?
yeah, it's like, well, service is inherently sincere, so it doesn't need to be called sincere service. So life
Mm.
is everything, but for it to be known experientially, it's like, all right, well, we've got to create the opposites in the first place. And something that I love that Teal Swan shares is that the one core pain that we all experience is the pain of being disconnected from oneness or unity or the love that we are, and that everything else stems from that. Um, and the more disconnected we are, like the deeper we are in the ego, the illusion, the false self, the fear. And so I think that's how we've gotten here. In order for the game of hide and go seek to be played, life needs to make itself unconscious to itself. And then you just come into this world. Some people are 60 and they've never done coaching. They wouldn't have a clue of what's going on. They've just managed what life is, but going into the depths of the unconscious and the psyche is very scary. There's no way
Mm.
about it. It can be terrifying at times. Like I had a friend of mine who started to experience some anxiety in like late 20s, early 30s, and we had a conversation about. He's like, "Yeah, man, it's scary. I'm standing at the lights, waiting across the street. And I'm just like, what is happening within me? What's going on?" So I think the way that we've gotten here is life has disconnected from itself for the purpose of being able to look back on itself. Like just as we can't look at our own eyes, you can't bite your own teeth. Um, it's just all part of the game. And I think at times, what is healthy is like fuck the game. Like fuck you, life, for just plonking me in this experience here.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
it can be rough. And there can be an element of like, I didn't ask for this. Someone might say, but your soul did. And you're like, fuck my soul, man. I didn't ask for this. And it's just a game as well. So I think it's also quite valuable to explore those emotions of how we feel towards life, towards the universe. And that it's also very safe to just say, fuck you, life, piece of shit.
Yes.
Like, I think that's
Yeah.
super safe and healthy personally.
And do you know what? I think it's a healthy thing to do, to question things. Like I think it's really helpful to have continue existential crises, because that's where, like, I call it the void. Like you go into the void and people get so scared of going into the void, into the nothingness, into the unsureness. And I know a lot of people experience shame around being in a void, going, I actually don't know what I want to do with my life or what I'm doing here. But I find that that's where we create space to actually just go inwards and just be. And we're so receptive to everything else around us, because we're either looking for answers or just putting our fingers in our ears, our hands over our eyes, going, la, 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 I don't want the answers. Just fuck off, like you said. And I think it's really healthy to go through those cycles, because if you're just constantly on, and if you're constantly in an all state of knowing the level of consciousness that you're at, you're not going to grow and evolve. Do you see that in other people as well?
Yeah, I see it a lot. I think for my experience, what it boils down to is willingness. I
Hmm.
think there's a big difference between wanting something and being willing to do what's required. Um, David Hawkins, he's got the scale of consciousness. He speaks a lot about the willingness to surrender illusion, life, emotion over to God, and that's the way you elevate up the scale. So I think the way that you raise your vibration is by letting go of what's heavy, letting go of
Mm.
what weighs it down. It's like if you've got two 15-kilo dumbbells in your hands and you're trying to jump and you're asking for tips and strategies of like, how do I jump really well? Someone's like, drop the weights, bro, and you'll jump higher. So he speaks a lot about willingness, and then I couple that with like Eckhart Tolle's that a basic understanding of the dysfunction of mind is all that's required to reach enlightenment. And if you are willing to hold your conscious attention on something, it will dissolve. Um, I really think it's this. I think it's so fundamental. The fear of addressing the fear of fear, and the willingness to explore yourself. The willingness, like if someone is not willing to feel lost, or they're not willing to go into the uncertainty, they just won't. Truly, for no other reason than a lack of willingness.
Mm.
If someone is in a job that they hate and they are unwilling to face the uncertainty of unemployment, then they are willing to tolerate staying in a toxic environment that they hate. So everyone has access to willingness at all times. Everyone can deepen into the willingness, and you can change the direction of where you're really pointing your willingness. And this is when behavioral change will come about. And a lot of people think, I'm willing, Andrew, I'm totally willing, like I'm ready to go. Like, yes, and you're like, all right, cool, jump. Oh, 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 what's the time, all this type of shit. And this is when the excuses come through, and it's like, okay, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with not being willing, but let's just establish the truth that right now you're not willing to jump, and it's more beneficial for you to tell yourself that you're not. So to answer your question of people not wanting to be in that void uncertainty space, it's the fear of it. It's the fear of fear and the lack of willingness to do it. There is an ever fluctuating relationship between fear and willingness. If
Mm.
fear is greater than willingness, fear wins, plain and simple. But as soon as willingness becomes greater than fear, even if the level of fear doesn't diminish, but the level of willingness increases, behavioral change takes place. So for anyone listening, you gotta you got to be more willing. And if you're telling yourself, I am, but there isn't behavioral change, you've got to admit to yourself, you're actually just not as willing as you would like to think you are. You want something really bad, but until the willingness matches the want, yeah, you're not going to create it.
Yeah. One of my favorite sayings is what you're not changing, you're choosing. And it's exactly that. What
Yeah.
would you say to someone who's like, but I want to be willing and I don't know how to be? Because it takes courage, doesn't it? Like it takes, and this is a muscle as well. I feel like this is a mental sets and reps, the same as going to the gym and lifting the weights. I feel as though, stepping in, taking courage, going in and being prepared to fail or lose everything, as we think we would, even though at the end of the day we're probably gaining everything that we need. But having that courage, like what would you say to someone who's like, I want to tip the scales of fear and willingness, but I don't even know how to, because I've done something before and it hasn't worked out. So then they've got this memory or this, preconceived idea that is unsafe. And obviously we are constantly like thriving in safety. So if it doesn't feel
Yep.
safe to them, they're like, but it didn't work for me last time. How do I know it's going to work out for me this time?
Gotcha. Yeah. So I've created a willingness scale, like a 0 to 100, and it's got a couple of different checkpoints and points of reference along it. If someone's like, I want to be willing, I'd say, great. That's an awesome place to start. I'd let them know that a clean no, I'm not willing is a statement of empowerment. Like I went to invest in a mentor one time. I'm like, I'm happy to invest $5,000 for the month. It was 10,000 for the investment, and I'm just like, oh no, I'm just not willing to invest that right now. But good on you for being there and charging that amount, rock and roll, and that was nice and clean. So I'd let people know that there's nothing wrong with saying no. And being willing isn't about I'm willing, I'm willing, I'm willing. The way that you get there is the honest answer. And
Mm.
so on the scale of willingness, 0 to 50 is varying degrees of no. 0 is a hard no. I'm not willing to now and I'm not willing to in the future. 1 to 50 is I'm not willing to right now, but I am willing to in the future. 51 plus is varying degrees of a yes. And so the way to move your way up the scale is to just answer honestly. Because if someone's at a 17, which is a no, I'm not willing, and they say, I'm 70%, 70%, it's just not truthful. And so they're lying to themselves. The 17 never has the opportunity to shift because it's never been owned. It's never been named. And it's like, I'm 70, I'm 70, I'm 70. It's like, if you want to get to willingness, you've got to admit where you currently are. So I would say it's great that you want to be more willing. It's okay to not be willing. You're allowed to be scared and afraid. And the irony of the no is that the honest answer is the fast, not the no, sorry, but the honest answer. The honest answer is the fastest way forward, but the irony is that it feels like it's the way backwards. It feels slower and it stings. So the honest answer moves them forward. And then also just that little flip to kind of light a fire under their ass of just been like, well, if you're not willing to face the uncertainty of employment, which is okay, that's fine, you need to understand that you are willing to tolerate a toxic work environment. That's a punch to the guts. That's just like, ugh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that person. And all of a sudden, there's change. So the way to move yourself up the scale to be 51 plus into willingness is to just answer honestly where you're at. And the scale helps you to do that. There's a few different points of reference that you can use. Because the question is, how willing are you to right now? And I had a client one time, they're like, 100%, mate, 100%. I'm like, oh, great. That's awesome. If you're 100%, that means that your body is open right now and you're allowing that emotion to move through. And they're like, oh, I'm the kind of person I've got to sit with this stuff and really get into it. It takes a little bit of time to come up. I'm like, yeah, okay. So you're 50 below. And you need to be honest with yourself and say, no, I'm not willing to go that deep within myself right now, which is what they said. And I'm like, you can feel the truth of that? He's like, yes, I can feel the truth of that. So honest answer. The honest answer as to where you are at is the fastest way forward.
That's amazing, and I love this scale that you've come up with. It sounds like such an incredible tool for people. Andrew, I want to circle back to something that we spoke about before because you mentioned about it was the metaphor about holding on to these 15-kilo weights, and the way to then move forward is to actually put the weight down, and then you'll be able to jump, which is an amazing metaphor. But for the people listening, like, how do we make that tangible? What are some of the steps? How do we put those metaphorical weights down and actually do something in life that is going to move us forward or help us jump?
Yes, great question. And the answer is to bring our awareness to the fact that we're holding on. I was speaking at a friend's event one time, and it was so great how this played out. A lady in the crowd, she said, "How do I let go of this?" And I said, "Okay, how come you're holding on?" And she goes, "I'm not." And I'm like, she wasn't even owning the fact because of her own self judgment or shame or victim mentality of it's happening to me, whatever it might be, wasn't even being responsible for the fact that she was holding on. So when she said, how do I let go of this? And I asked, how come you're holding on? She says, oh, I'm not. I'm not holding on. It's holding on to me. So the kind of practical way to go about it and what I help people with is when it comes to surrender. So to surrender is to stop fighting. A lot of people say, oh, you got to let go. You just need to surrender. You got to accept that. All right, well, let's bring your awareness to the holding on. Let's bring your awareness to the fighting. Let's bring your awareness to the resistance. If someone says you've got to surrender, and to surrender is to stop fighting, it presupposes that there is a fight that is taking place.
Mm.
And so I get people to tune into it. I'm like, can you feel that tightness in your body? Can you feel that tension? Can you feel how you're pushing back against your emotions? And they're like, yeah, I can. I'm doing that. I'm like, great, push a little harder. Can you do that for me? Can you push harder? Yep, push up. Ease it off just a little bit. Can you do that? Yeah, cool. And so what this does is it tunes them into a felt sense of how they are doing the fight, of how they are doing resistance, of how they are pushing back. And everyone innately has the ability to surrender and the know-how and the wisdom of it. And so I hold this belief, and if they go, nah, I can't feel it, I'm like, you can, everyone can, we'll get there. And then what happens is when they can feel that they're pushing back against, it gives a felt sense and a point of reference of what surrender must be. And so that's the practical way. I could say, can you feel how you're holding on? You're like, yeah, I'm holding on. It's tight. I'm like, great. You're doing that. Another one I teach is like to open your body up. I'm like, okay, and I'll on calls, I've done it many times. I'll get people to physically represent how they are internally closed off. So some end up just sitting there like this, some bring their knees up to their chest, some kind of cower away like this. So I'm tuning them into what closed off is, what fighting against is, what resistance is, what holding on to is, because then that gives them the felt sense of what opening up must be, of what surrender must be, of what letting go of the weights must be. And the more they practice this, the better they get at it. And they're like, that's what surrender is just getting out of the way and allowing the emotion to move on through. So that's the most kind of like practical how to steps that
Mm,
I've got for people.
I love it. Have you read the book, The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer?
I haven't, but I've heard about it. Yeah.
He also does the Untethered Soul and Living Untethered. So the Untethered Soul was one of the, I guess, the first books when I first started stepping into personal development that I listened to, and it has such an impact on me. And I've listened to it multiple times. And then the Surrender Experiment, which is, it's for anyone listening out there, like Michael Singer is an incredible author with an incredible story, and I highly recommend his books. The surrender experiment's a big one as well. And I feel like it's something that you can always reference back to as well, because there's so much wisdom in it. And you can take, it's the same as Eckhart Tolle's books, and like you take so much from it, but there's always going to be something else the next time that you come to listen to it.
Yes. Yeah. I've heard good things about both books.
Yeah, yeah. So, Andrew, one of the things that I love to do is just normalize our experience as well, because we can sit here on a podcast and say, well, we're coaches and we help people do the work and we know how to surrender. Tell us something you're working through on a personal level. Like tell us some of the shadow that you've experienced, recently, or where's your level of willingness for something that's on the lower end that you're working through?
Yeah, so something I've been working through recently is going deeper into like a new depth of ease with making money. And
Mm.
what's been coming up for me is shadows of it being like cocky and arrogant to be making X amount of money and for it to just be nothing, for it to just be a nothing thing rather than like, yeah, fuck, I'm stoked about it, or like, oh, I've worked hard for it, or just like it just being, it's just a nothing. It's just a nothing thing. Um, that has been something that I've been just deepening into in the last couple of weeks, and a deeper stepping into an embodiment of just having strong belief around client creation, strong belief around money, strong belief around things happening. That then been like, yeah, I just have beliefs that create a life of ease. And yeah, for me, the shadows around that have been cocky and arrogant, and the fears of that have been a friend, a friend or two comes into my mind of them thinking that I'm cocky or arrogant, or that thinks he's too good, or whatever it is like that. So that's just something that have recently been has been recently passing through the body, so that I have been dropping deeper into, that far more embodied belief, rather than just, like we spoke about before, just saying things, but
Mm.
actually having that belief in the body. Um, so yeah, and that would probably, for me in my life, that the old rejection from the tribe would probably be one of the biggest things I've had to navigate. Um, but that's the most recent thing.
And where were you sitting on the willingness scale to release that, or how far have you moved along the scale? Because I'm assuming it's something that you move through, that it's fluid.
Yeah, it was pretty smooth. It was pretty smooth through the process. It's like the discomfort is there, but the willingness to open the body up and feel the discomfort was present. There was certainly a point unconsciously where it would have been a low willingness for sure. Um, I did just some stuff around money being taboo, just taboo, bad, and making it too easy, being, yeah, just cocky, arrogant, bad type thing. But as it came up, it wasn't a confronting thing of like, I really need to sit down and work with this. It was more just like, oh, this is shadow and emotion that I've done enough times that I know that it's not the truth of who I am, yet I let myself completely feel that. I know that it's safe, even though it feels unsafe. Um,
Mm.
and that's those spiritual teachings, like you kind of asked at the start of the conversation, is like, and what I let people know is I'm like, I know that this isn't the truth of who I am, but you've got to let yourself fully feel as if it is. So, um, yeah, that's been my recent experience with that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And in full transparency, if I was to answer the question, like for me, there's actually something that came up yesterday, and it was around the friendship I hold with my ex partner. And we went through. We love the term conscious uncoupling. It's
Yeah.
very woke. And it was around, that desire to hold on to this friendship and the meaning that, that we'd kept on it, yet still providing for each other in different ways, mostly emotionally. And so for me, it was that willingness to actually just let it dissolve. And I realized, how tightly I was gripping on to an expectation from him to still, to still be there, and me for him as well, that we're like, oh, but we can be friends and we can support each other, through the dissolving of our relationship, which has been going on for months. To finally realize, hang on, this is not actually working or serving either of us. And if I'd asked, answered this question a few weeks ago around the willingness to, it would have been, below that 50%. And then yesterday, it interestingly enough, on the 10-10 portal, because we're recording this in October, so it was the 10th of the 10th. It opened right up, and it was like, it was both right in front of us. And we had the conversation around, okay, well, this needs to shift, because prior to that, we weren't willing to consider not having each other in each other's lives.
Yes.
And this is the thing, like, we're still human. And this is, I love, radical honesty and transparency. And I think that we need to have more of these conversations as coaches and leaders in this space, that we are human too. That we're still having our human experience. Yes, we have the tools to be able to move through them, but we also have to, bring awareness to the fact that we still go through our stuff as well. We're not exempt from this. And I feel like sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect for people in our field, that, you look up to someone, or you see their life on social media, or they're teaching or coaching so many people. And it's almost like, okay, well, they've got to this point where they're so enlightened, and it's so unrealistic that to think that they're not human going through their stuff as well.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a great point you make. I think it's a great question that you ask and then also share for yourself, because I know anytime that I hear a mentor be vulnerable and share, and especially back in the early days, you're just like, oh, you go through shit too. Like, it's not this putting someone on a pedestal, which does happen. So I think it's a great question to ask, and for the guest and for yourself to answer.
Yeah, I just love vulnerability and the art of vulnerability too. Like, let's, strip back, the parts of our ego that need to be polished and think that we can't be vulnerable and that we can't be on that lower end of, the willingness spectrum or the scale. Like, let's just get in there and just be so human about it, because that's what life is all about, is being human and not, chasing that enlightened state. Like, that's literally the name of this podcast, is Enlightened, because we're here for the enlightened journey of life. It's all about experiencing life, and that's where my message is getting so loud, because we're here to do life. We're here as humans. I'm not here to bypass. I've tried bypassing plenty of times before and it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
Especially when I started stepping into this space and then realizing, like, putting people on a pedestal, thinking people were gurus and so enlightened. And then I'd see them off stage or off camera, and I'm like, hang on a second. You're a completely different person to the image that I had or the perception that I had of you. Hang on, you're still human. Oh, okay, righto. So I've
Yes.
definitely had, times where I put people, really high up, and then they've got further to come crashing down. And now I say, I don't look up to anyone. I look across to someone. I look across to you. I look
That's
across
cool.
to my mentors, because we're all on that same. I look across to my clients. I get so inspired by the people that I work with, and I can actually receive so much from them. Just because I'm sitting in the seat of being their mentor or their coach doesn't mean that I'm any different to them.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. I like that. I'm looking across. I think that's well said.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Andrew, how do people find you? Obviously, you mentioned you're in Bali. Do you work with people online? How does that work?
Yeah, all online. Best way to find me would just be go to the website www.andrewdpearce.com. There's a D in between Andrew and Pierce there. So www.andrewdpearce.com. That's got all my other socials. There's a bunch of free stuff you can check out, and you can contact me from there.
Amazing. We'll link to all of that in the show notes. Andrew, one last question before we wrap this up. And to you, what is the meaning of life?
What is the meaning of life? I think the meaning of life is to just enjoy yourself, to do what you want to do what you want to do with vocation, do what you want to do with the people you want to do it with, do what you want to do in your hobbies and interests. I think that's why life is here, to express and explore and enjoy. So, and I think the way to enjoyment and happiness is doing what you want to be doing. So that's what I think. That's what I think it's all about.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, likewise. I've enjoyed the conversation, and thanks for having me on board.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I hope you love the Enlightened podcast, and the biggest compliment you can give me is subscribing to this podcast, sharing it, and leaving a rating and review. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. My handle is @JenHamiltonOfficial, and the podcast handle is Enlightened_podcast. You can also find the video version on YouTube on my channel. Just search Enlightened, and don't forget to hit subscribe. Have a beautiful day and enjoy living the enlightened journey of life.